Well, Saša, I think the only word I can come up with when hearing this story is surreal. I mean, you've got a famous Chinese athlete accusing a very famous man in China of sexual assault on social media. The post gets deleted, and we haven't physically seen that athlete since. Have you been able to wrap your head around this story yet?
Well, this has been happening more and more frequently in China, and not just with athletes. We've seen it with popular entertainment stars. We've seen it with other people who have raised their voices when it comes to the Chinese government, when it comes to any sort of criticism of the government, and specifically any kind of criticism of those at the very, very top. That's a very sensitive issue, and usually this is actually the kind of thing that I would expect to happen when someone like Peng Shuai comes out and actually accuses a very top official, a former vice premier, of sexual assault.
Well, let me follow up there, because you were a correspondent in Beijing, and we saw the email that came out from Chinese officials with a quote from Peng Shuai saying she's fine, saying these are all fabricated stories. A lot of people are bringing the validity of that quote into question, including the WTA. Are we at a point now where if we don't physically see her say something to a television screen, we still have to question whether or not she's safe or not?
Well, even if she said something to a television screen or on a screen, we still wouldn't really know. We have had other situations where people have disappeared, whether they be high-ranking business people or others, and they've not shown up. Often there is this kind of a statement or some kind of testimony from a relative that they've seen them and they're okay, or in fact, televised appearances or televised confessions. This is part of the theater of what happens when someone takes a very high-profile position like this, attacking someone in the Communist Party.
Coming up with these Olympics and heading to Beijing, we hear words like protest, we hear words like boycott. A story like this, does it just add more fuel to that fire?
It certainly does. It puts more pressure, ironically, on governments in the West to actually take a public position. Governments like the Canadian government, I think, have been reluctant to go down that road. The Americans have said that their athletes are most likely to be appearing at the Olympics. I think it's very, very unlikely that there will be that kind of a boycott. But we are hearing word from the States that there could be some kind of a diplomatic boycott, that officials won't go, that certainly President Joe Biden won't go. But it's hard to say how far the West is willing to go to actually pressure China on these kind of issues, because there is a lot at stake. Governments like the Canadian government are worried about some kind of backlash from China. Many points that it could apply pressure, as we've seen, and even the Americans are reluctant to get into some kind of a big fight over what is, after all, a Chinese citizen being handled by the Chinese government. So I think it does, print headlines and perhaps raise concerns about foreign athletes. But at the end of the day, I doubt there's very much that the rest of the world can do.